2026 wide receiver Jonah Winston is going to be committing in a couple days. We're watching him right now. 5'9", 155 from Hoover, Alabama. Brother of Jameis Winston. So Jonah Winston's a guy that I watched after his freshman year and was really excited about him back then. There's just the same problems that you had with him now or the same things back then. 5'9", 155, it's not a typical college football frame. Why is this dude only a 3-star? Why are the recruiting websites not really all fired up about him? Undersized, and we don't have that top-level track number. These recruiting websites can't really justify giving these kids higher star ratings if we, don't have top-level measurables, which we don't with Jonah Winston, and then a top-level track number or, quote-unquote verified athletic numbers. A lot of times they're BS anyway, but just don't have that with Jonah Winston. So not a guy that recruiting websites are going to be in love with, but this is a guy that does deserve to be on a Power 5 roster. And why do I say that? So we're going to watch a lot of receivers, and I'm going to get excited about the 6'4 kids, the 6'5 kids that, run 10-4s. That stuff translates, but a lot of them just don't have an understanding of really the nuances of the wide receiver position. And they just never can put together how to run routes, how to separate at the next level, kind of having that feeling for zone coverages, where to cut down, that kind of stuff, where to break down, I should say, and come back to the quarterback. Jonah Winston, he does that pretty well. We're going to see him run pretty good routes. I'm not saying that this is a guy with top-level track numbers because he's not. I just don't think he's as fast as most of the wide receivers we watch, and he's not going to be as big as most of the wide receivers we watched. But I do think this is a guy that already has an understanding of how to separate. So we're going to see that in the open field also. I think this is a kid with rack upside as well. Get the ball in his hands and let him get upfield. He's not going to win because he's faster than everybody. I actually do like some of the explosiveness that we see on the tape, and I actually think this kid runs with pretty good contact balance. So at 5'9", 155, I'm not so concerned about the frame. I almost think 5'9", 155 is better than 6', 155, just because he doesn't have a slight build. He's undersized, don't get me wrong, but he's not a guy that looks like he's going to get hurt at the next level like some of these, top-level rated track kids that we watch. Sometimes we worry about that with them. Anyways, some of these other 6'4", guys with verified track numbers, they can just never figure out how to separate, and they just turn into being those field stretchers, those guys that you just ask to run verticals. And there's a place for that in college football, don't get me wrong. That's the role that the NFL does have. You do need to have guys that do that on NFL rosters. But, to be a top-level wide receiver, they just kind of never figure out how to get open. With Jonah Winston, everything's under control. I do think this kid's a pretty good natural hands catcher. Only reason you're going to talk about this kid being a 3-star is undersized, doesn't have those top-level track numbers. And there is a conversation. That stuff matters. I'm not trying to downplay the importance of athleticism at the next level, but I do think this is a guy with above-average football skills. I do like the hands. Just a tough football player. You watch Jameis Winston. He didn't go to Hoover. He went to Hueytown. That was a guy that I think you kind of saw he was a bit more gifted by God, and maybe not in the straight line speed, but at quarterback, gifted with a really big frame and a really good right arm. Saw that on the high school tape for Jameis Winston, but what really got you excited about him was kind of just the grit that he plays with. And you see that with Jonah Winston also. He's got stock blocking highlights sandwiched in between the touchdown highlights. Really like the way that he competes on the competitor. You need this stuff on a college football roster. I'll tell you that right now. Not every kid you recruit in the NIL world is just not going to be a guy with those top level numbers. This is a guy that I think definitely deserves to be on a Power 5, Power 4, I should say, roster, and then just see how he develops. Could get faster, I think he's already pretty strong, actually. I'm not really worried about that, but just gets after it in the run game, in the screen game. Really like that from him, and he's got to do that. These roles have to be filled at the next level, but I think we're going to watch the senior year film, and we're going to think he's a lot faster, and I do. He's probably not bigger, but I do think a couple clips I saw from his first game his senior year, probably a bit faster already. So that's really all it is to me. It's why are recruiting sites not fired up about him? That's what it is to me. He's 5'9", and we don't have that top-level track number. That's up to you guys. You guys are fans. I'm a fan also. How much do you weigh those verified numbers? How much do you think that contributes to being a successful football player at the next level? Whatever your opinion is on that, I think is kind of what you think Jonah Winston's going to do at the next level. But we'll watch the senior year tape when it comes out for sure. It's still got a couple more weeks till we can get enough clips to really talk about that. But, for right now, for the junior year film, that's really what it is to me. Anyways, that was Jonah Winston. You guys let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.